Teyvat is brimming with all kinds of supernatural beings. The nations are ruled by archons, supernatural beings exist inside and outside of cities. If you dare step outside the city gates, you'll find monsters of every kind, but also ghosts, oceanids, hypostases, Seelie, and other benign beings like the Aranara. Basically, finding a normal human being is kind of hard, and even then there are countless species of them, so even the concept of human is hard to define. Well, today we're gonna talk about the supernatural beings that we've met so far with the sole purpose of defining them as best as we can. And at the end of the video, I also have a question for you on this topic, so think of this video as a generic recap before Fontaine, since we're bound to meet many new supernatural beings there. Before we begin, this is a theory video, well, kinda. I use information available in the game, but my theories and conclusions are not to be considered the official lore of the game. With that being said, let's start with the first kind of being that we're probably most acquainted with, the gods. The gods of Teyvat are not elemental beings, they are personifications of natural phenomena or natural elements in general. For example, Venti is a wind sprite, Zhongli is most likely a stone, Makoto and A are lightning and thunder, Kapatzer was another personification of thunder, Nahida is a branch of tree, Marcosius is the spark when a stone struck a stone, Guizhong was dust, Havria was salt, the Caribbean was a storm, Ozaya was a vortex, Aintreus may have been a blizzard, and Orabashi was probably a coral reef snake or the personification of the coral reef in general. I mean, the list is long. I won't include Nabu Malikata among the gods because we're gonna talk about her in detail later. So what is a god in Teyvat? As far as we've seen, they are higher beings and they are immortal. When we talk about immortality, there are two main meanings to this word. A being that cannot die, or a being that, unless something happens to it, can live forever. In some ways, the gods of Teyvat are both. They have extremely long lives and they don't really seem to die of old age, and if they do die, mainly because of someone or something else, they never really die. They usually transform into something else that can be either good, like the sacred sakura tree for Makoto, or evil or dangerous, like the remnants of the gods from the Archon War, their wrath and regrets that turn into what Zhongli called demons, or like Kanakapatsir that turn into the thunder manifestation. Not every dead god turns into something though. For example, Havria didn't transform into anything good nor evil after her death, she just turned into salt. Despite the gods being potentially capable of living forever, they end up suffering from erosion, which is a mandatory version of senile dementia that only applies to any kind of being that lives for way too long, which causes them to lose their minds and go berserk. Think of it as hard drives. They keep storing data for millennia and once full, they start erasing the oldest files, among which there's the operating system itself, causing the system to crash. I think that these hard drives are the stars from their constellation since they store people's memories. Zhongli knew that after 6,000 years, erosion was close, so he emancipated the people of Liyue, while A decided to relive her own memories in the plane of Euthymia without gaining new ones, hence preventing erosion altogether. Gods can also naturally use elemental powers, more specifically versions of the elements found in nature like lightning, wind, stone, and so on. An easier and better way to explain this would be what Nahida told us about the fungi. They can borrow elemental powers from nature around them, but are not elemental beings, so they cannot use true elemental powers. Gods can also be substituted, which is obvious since they can either die or suffer from erosion. Makoto was replaced by A, which means that not every god died during the Archon War. Rokkedevata created a new god before dying. It seems that the Pyro Archon will be born from a womb, and I think that the new Hydro Archon was created by the people from the sentient power that Renee was looking for in the Girl of the Sands. Furthermore, Ningguang also told us that
another Lord of Geo will arise sooner or later.
So it seems to be common knowledge that a new god will always come when an Archon dies. Lastly, we witnessed how Scaramouche almost became a god thanks to the power of people's dreams or memories combined with that oanosis. And we know the vision holders are allogenes that can attain godhood and ascend to Celestia. To recap, gods are immortal beings doomed to go crazy the longer they live who can use some kind of elemental powers. Now you may have realized that this generic description that defines a god can also fit other beings of Teyvat that are not for some reason considered gods, and they are what I will call the Illuminated beings, for a lack of a better and comprehensive term. We know two main kinds of Illuminated beings, the Adepti from Liyue and the Youkai from Inazuma. I won't include the Aranara, the Genie and the Pari because they were created by gods, and I won't talk about the Lost Folks, the Oceanids, because we don't really know a lot about them. Lastly, very interestingly, as a viewer said during one of my live streams, Mondstadt doesn't have any kind of illuminated being at all. Well, there is Alice, who has been around for thousands of years and has powers, but we don't know if she was born in Mondstadt or if she later settled down there. The Adepti are mainly animals, that's why they're called Illuminated beasts, and they can speak and take on a human form. They were already illuminated before they met Morax, and he, being the Prime Adeptus, simply taught them the Adepti arts and made a contract with them, thus giving them the title of Adepti. If you think about it, the Adepti are not that different from the Fatui Harbingers. They already had their powers or quirks or mental issues if we think about a certain someone. Then they met Piero, the first Fatus, who gave them the title of Fatui and assigned them a delusion with which they acquired further powers. The only difference is that delusions may have come after the creation of the organization, and I bet they were invented by Dottore. Anyway, most Adepti can be split into two main animals. Birds, for example Claratainer, Mountain Shaper and the Yaksha Pervases are cranes, Sea Gazer was a goose, and Alatus or Shao is a peng, and stags like Mooncarver, Skybracer and probably both Yanfei and her father since she has antlers. There are also other kinds of animals though. Ganyu and her father are Qilin, a kind of hoofed chimera. Changsheng is a white snake. Bosacius was a Tengshui, a flying serpent dragon. Monogias was a Xinyan, a monkey. Indarius was a Huoshu, a rat. And Bonanus was a Luojuan, a conch squirrel. There is only one Adeptus we have no idea what kind of animal she is, and that is Street War Rambler, Madame Ping. As Shao says in his vision story, the Adepti can manipulate the elements as if they had an internal or innate vision. Despite that, Yanfei, Ganyu and Shao received an actual vision during their lives. As to why they received the vision, that's everybody's guess. It's not because they use human forms, because Madame Ping doesn't have one, nor because they are half humans, because Shao isn't. On the official page of the game, it is said that Shao displays a vision just because humans who can manipulate the elements are expected to have one, but in his story, he doesn't remember when he received his vision, so it's a huge contradiction. Anyway, the Adepti also have another power, the Adeptal energy we experienced in the fight against Azael. Madame Ping gave us shockwaves, Ganyu gave us the survival capability over chilling blood that she used during the Archon War, and Shao gave us his swiftness, his movement speed. Adeptal energy and Adepti arts are so strong that even prevented Chi-Chi from dying, but are too much for a human to handle, so she became a raging zombie. Similarly, Kamuna Harunosuke may have become immortal thanks to the Adepti arts, as it was hinted during the Labyrinth Warriors event. Lastly, the Adepti can have children with humans, although it doesn't seem to be a very common thing since we only know Ganyu, who has lived for at least 3700 years, and Yanfei, who is young enough for a human mother to still be alive and going around the world with her Adeptus husband. The other kind of illuminated beings we know are the Youkai from Inazuma. As before, they are also animals that can take on human forms if powerful enough, but sometimes also objects that were exposed to or used by yokai can gain sentience and become yokai themselves. We've met lots of yokai. The Oni are orcs, the Kitsune are foxes, the Tengu are predatory birds, the Bakedanuki are tanuki, the Nekomata are cats, just to name a few. Of these yokai, the Oni may have had children with humans, which thinned out their bloodline and made them look more like humans, but I'm not too sure about it. Yokai also seem to have innate powers that don't rely on the elements. The Tengu have their own Tengu art of transcension and magical items such as their feather fans and their masks. The Oni similarly own Oni masks that possess powers beyond the norm. Another example of this power is the yokai power that the Tsumogami Hanyu Dachizuru was able to use. Lastly, the yokai can actually create something similar to the subspace creation of the Adepti, since the Mikawa Flower Festival was held in a pocket world. Both Adepti arts and yokai arts can be taught to humans. One example of this is Kamuna Harunosuke, who trained under Reizenbo, the Great Tengu, and learned the Tengu art of transcension, which he later fused with the Adepti arts he learned in Liyue, to create the art of Onmyodo to make both the Mystic Omnio Chamber and Shiki Taisho to train the shogunate forces against the monsters of the Cataclysm. The art of Onmyodo basically imitated the power of visions through paper seals, and it's still used by the Kairagi to this day. Now, who else is there that fits the description of a god but is never defined as such? Well, the Primordial One and the Shades are never called gods, except for the beginning of Before Sun and Moon when we read All Heavenly Gods. For example, Azeroth is the ruler of time and even A calls her a higher power. Only the people of Mondstadt, thousands of years later, called her the god of time. Like in my video about Khaenri'ah, I think there is an actual god above the Primordial One based on the Gnostic concept of the 30 hypostatic ideas or eons of the Primordial Father. The youngest of them, Sophia, was expelled from the Pleroma, the totality, and created the imperfect world and humans just like the Primordial One did in Genshin Impact. It's also interesting how the God of Wisdom is the avatar of Irminsul, the engine of Teyvat, and Sophia is the Eon of Wisdom. Since the 30 eons were 15 pairs, it could also mean that the second Youkai may have been Theletos, Sophia's partner, aka Christ, who gave Gnosis to humanity to bring Sophia back to the Pleroma to the Primordial Father, Vifos. Can you see the similarities here? Also, right after my last video, I started playing Honkai Star Rail on stream, and there I found the Eons again, more specifically 7 paths for 6 elements, because physical isn't really an element to be honest. And 2 of these elements, quantum and imaginary, are concepts, just like in the Baptismal Bishop experimental records when it comes to the 7 Dragon Lords and their 6 elements, 2 of which, Void and Ether, are also concepts. Going back to the Shades, they don't really have powers connected to the elements. A Shade created a whole microcosm, another one helped with the creation of nature, and Istaroth rules over time itself. Moving on, other godlike beings are the Dragon Lords. They are older than Teyvat itself, they are immortal because of both their long lives and because of their ability to come back to life while retaining their memories just like a Pep and Nibelung. The dragons are elemental beings and they are the only ones that can wield the true elements. The last being we need to talk about is Nabu Malikata. All things considered, she shouldn't have been considered a god at all. She was a Seelie, a very ancient race that probably existed since the beginning of Teyvat. The Seelie, as we all know, were cursed and expelled from the heavens after a certain catastrophe, most likely at the end of the Envoy Age since Nabu Malikata ended up in the desert created by a celestial nail. Because she was a Seelie, she most likely never had a chance to become an Archon to begin with, which could have been one of the reasons why she decided to go against the Heavenly Principles. I mean, it's not like she had anything to lose at that point. Because she hailed from the heavens, it's no shock that her powers, or at least a fragment of her, Khaenri'ah, could negate the effect of the Abyss, meaning that she was probably a direct creation of either the Shades or of the Primordial One itself. Now, with so many illuminated beings and higher beings all over Teyvat that can use multiple kinds of powers and live forever, my question to you is this: why are only some of them defined as gods and not all of them? My personal idea is that the gods are beings that were created by a specific higher being, while the illuminated beings are natural occurrences of the world. Who is this creator? I think it's Istaroth, or maybe the Shades in general. Venti was created from the branches of time, and he was suddenly born after the people prayed to the god of time for help. And Kapazir also said, "She gave me a name long ago, but I have forgotten it." My theory is that during the Envoy Age, the people lived with the envoys of the gods, the Seelie, and worshipped the Shades, especially because on one of the murals on Dragonspine we can clearly see a huge clock, which normally represents Istaroth. Then, after the disaster that almost destroyed Teyvat, the Shades either decided to hide or were forced to do so by the current rulers of Celestia, the second who came, aka the Heavenly Principles, also because the humans questioned the heavens' authority and schemed to enter the Garden of the Gods. So, the Shades created the gods of Teyvat to live among the people and rule them in person. This will also explain why Venti changed the geography of Mondstadt, sending into the ocean the temple of the god of time, and the people suddenly stopped worshipping her. When it comes to Nabu Malikata and Istaroth being defined as gods, considering the fact that the modern inhabitants of Teyvat have no idea of the true history of their own world, unless there's a specific definition for a supernatural being like the Adepti or the Youkai, they simply have no other way to define them if not as gods. And that's it! I hope you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, and if you're interested in Genshin Impact Theory videos, consider subscribing. I'm now also streaming on YouTube, so click on the notification bell to know when I'm going live. Anyway, I can't wait to read and discuss your theories on the gods and the supernatural beings of Teyvat, so I'll be waiting for you in the comment section. Talking about streaming, I'll play Honkai Star Rail version 1.1 on stream as soon as it drops. I just hope I'll be able to level up all my character's traces and find better relics since I'm equilibrium free now. I guess Genshin Impact streams are going to have to wait since we didn't really get that much to do in version 3.7. Anyway, thanks for watching, and until next time, over and out.